It's punk rock bowling time. That's right, for the 24th year, one of the greatest festivals on earth, in my opinion, returns to downtown Las Vegas the weekend of May 25th, 26th, and 27th. I have had some of my greatest times playing this thing and just hanging out at this thing. You want to know how much this festival speaks to Turned Out a Punk's mindset? The headliners are Devo, Descendants, and Madness. Every day of this festival, the lineup is stacked with amazing bands of all types and stripes of punk and hardcore from all different eras, from ska to post-hardcore. We're talking like Bratmobile to Rock from the Crypt to Stiff Little Fingers to the Cosmic Psychos to Scowl to Chad. And then there's also all these late night after shows which are happening. And you wouldn't believe the lineup of these things, from the Zeros to Agnostic Front and everything in between. This festival is out of control for fans of punk. So I hope I will see you there, because this isn't like some sort of festival that you just go to and the bands are secluded in some sort of backstage area. Bands and fans and just punks alike are all just taking over downtown Las Vegas. So you turn around and all of a sudden you're gambling beside John Doe from X. I don't know if John Doe gambles, but if you turn around on the buffet line, you'll probably see me. And you better believe we're going to be talking about punk music. And because this festival loves this podcast as much as this podcast loves this festival, Punk Rock Bowling is bringing you a series of special episodes. So each and every week, I will have an episode going up featuring someone that's playing this festival. And hot damn, are there some good ones coming. Head over to punkrockbowling.com and hopefully I see you in downtown Las Vegas, May 25th, 26th, and 27th. Hello and welcome to another edition of Turned Out a Punk. I'm your host, Damian Abraham, and once again, I'm bringing you a conversation with someone who grew up listening to punk, may or may not still be involved with punk, but had their life changed by the genre in a major way. And today on the show, huge guest, a genius in my opinion. You hear me gush about him a lot in this episode. From the band Devo, Mark Mothersbaugh is here on the show today. And legend. Like a bona fide legend. More on that in 1 second. But first, if you would like to get in touch with me, you can hit up the email address, turnedoutapunkpodcast@gmail.com. That is run by my brother and the show producer and guest booker extraordinaire. Look what he did here. Tristan Abraham, and he will get the message to me. Thank you, Tristan, for all the hard work you do for the show. You can also find me on Twitter or Instagram at Left for Damian. There is a TikTok page, a YouTube page, a Instagram page, and a Facebook page, all for Turned Out a Punk. All those can be found at Turned Out a Punk on those platforms, and those are all run by Tristan. No, not the YouTube page, or the TikTok page. That's why they're not updated very often. They're me. If you want to support the show, tell all your friends about it. Let them all know that you enjoy this podcast that you get to hear twice a week. Oh my gosh, twice a week. Why am I doing this to myself? Because I love this. This is all I want to do is talk about this shit. So that's why I'm doing it. You can check out the band I play in. You can find out more information over at fuckedup.cc. And tell your friends. Tell all your friends about this podcast. That's it. All right. On to today's show. As I said off the top, the great Mark Mothersbaugh is here today. And I have been a Devo fan since I was a little kid. So this is a huge one for me. I talked to Mark years ago for Under the Radar magazine. I'll put a link in the description. You can find it online, obviously, as well. And in that conversation, I got to find out stuff about Devo I'd always wanted to know, and I refer to that conversation all the time on the show. You've probably heard me bring it up. So the hope has always been there to have Mark on the podcast at some point, but I really got to give it up to Tristan and the good folks over there at the great Blank Records for setting this thing up. Blank Records has put out Nuns reissues, Germs reissues, Babes in Toyland records, and now has put out this fantastic book by Mark. And this thing is called Apotropaic Beatnik Graffiti, a fantastic art book. This thing is gorgeous and almost sold out. So head on over there right now to Apotropaic Beatnik Graffiti.bigcartel.com. There'll be a link once again in that description for this episode. And order yourself a copy. And head over to Blank Records and order yourself a copy of this Germ single or this Nuns record or Babes in Toyland record. They got a lot of good stuff over there as well. So that's it. I'm not going to ramble on anymore. When he posted a bunch of stuff on Instagram, as I said, from my Devo collection later on this week. Not that it's like ridiculous or anything like that, but I got some stuff. I'm also very excited that Devo is the headliner on the Sunday night at Punk Rock Bowling. So I will be seeing them very shortly. And that's it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Mark Mothersbaugh on Turned Out a Punk. Mark, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, I'm tickled to be here.
Well, I nearly said coming back to the show because 14 years ago, you and me had a conversation for Under the Radar magazine, and it is one of my favorite conversations I've ever gotten to have with anybody. And now I've done like 600 episodes of this podcast, and I still go back to that conversation and reference it all the time in talking to people. So very excited to get to have you back on.
Well, no, I'm going to have to go check it out.
Well, I think it was profound for me because it's when I really started to look at punk as not just being this sort of capital P music thing that people kind of like lump on it, but started looking at it as being a cultural revolution that is best summed up under those four-letter words for me. Maybe not for you, but yeah, it really drove that point home in that conversation. So I guess I should start off the way they all start off, which is, Mark, how did you get into punk? Do you remember the first time you ever came across the term?
Well, it was before the music, the word punk was out there. That was like a weakling in prison, for instance, different things like that. It was like it had, all demeaning term, all demeaning interpretations of it. But for me, it was like punk was kind of, we were like I think we were much more punk than we knew in the early days. And I'll tell you what I mean by that is when I first met Jerry and Bob Lewis, it was at Kent State, and they were grad students, and I was like a freshman or a sophomore at the time. I had just gotten to school, and before that, I had been kind of curious about beatniks. I mean, they were hard to find in rural Akron, Ohio, but I knew there was like this house close to Akron University when I was in high school, and I remember going over there with some friends, kind of like checking it out. But it was like we were like kind of intimidated because we were kids, and but I think what attracted me to beatniks was they were like the first intellectual movement post the atomic bomb, and they of young people that were going, hey, maybe humans aren't the best thing on planet Earth, in spite of how we pound our chests and brag and call ourselves, the center of the universe. Maybe that's not really true. And I kind of I agreed with that, but I didn't really know what that meant to agree with that at the time. And when I got to Kent State then in 1968, there was one like beatnik house that was just off the campus. And I went over and I kind of looked in the door and I knew they were like doing espresso and, there was probably bongos and guitar. But it was like when I met Jerry then, like really, like, I think I was a sophomore, and I was doing something at the time. I got to Kent and I became a graffiti artist and didn't know there wasn't a term uh, uh, yet, for being a graffiti artist or being a posting artist. And so I used to wait till the bell rang at 3:30 and everybody would leave class, and then I had the whole art department all to myself, which meant that instead of queuing up in line to burn a screen in the in printing class, to me, printing was, I mean, we didn't have computers then, so we'd heard of them and they were around, but we didn't have access to them, but um, to me, printmaking was like the coolest, most, like fastest turnaround, like highest tech art uh, uh, of all the different disciplines. That was the one that I was the most attracted to. And so I'd just wait till everybody left school. And then I didn't have to queue up in line to burn a screen, print a screen, lay out the prints, like, burn another screen, clean a screen, uh, you know, do it the second color. I could in one night, I could start at 3:30 or 4 in the afternoon. And by 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning, I'd have a piece of art that I'd made, and I made it smaller size because my vision was so poor that I couldn't really do big things. And for printmaking, to do them small was actually was actually extra great. But then I'd have the stuff that I'd been printing, this artwork I'd been making, and I'd want to do so. I was sticking it up all over campuses. That's how I met Jerry. He saw that stuff and he goes, he was, like I said, he was like about 4 years ahead of me in school, and he was like, "Are you the guy putting pictures of astronauts holding potatoes standing on the moon all over campus?" Because I would stick them up on like like the dean's, like a glass door or on people's uh, um, what were those things you put your clothes in? What are those
Oh, like
called?
washing machines,
Yeah, they're
dryers?
lockers. They're lockers, and
Oh,
but
lockers.
then I'd go through the parking lot and I'd stick them on people's, bumpers. They'd have stickers that they were like, "What the hell is that? Is there a guy throwing up standing in front of a picture of the moon on my?" And I said, "Yeah," to Jerry. I go, "Yeah, what of it?" And he goes, "What do potatoes mean to you?" And so we got into this discussion about potatoes, and in the vegetable kingdom, humans were like potatoes. We weren't like the most beautiful vegetable, and we weren't the grandest vegetables. We weren't asparagus and we weren't eggplant, but we were these, we felt like we were like the dirty, like asymmetric underground vegetable. We were down underneath the ground and but we had eyes all around us, so we saw everything, and we were a staple of everybody's diet. So we liked that. So that's how we became friends. But when we started doing music together, the lyrics that he was writing, to me, they had kind of like a beatnik feel to them. Like if you ever go back and listen to Be Stiff, that was early lyrics of Jerry's. They're really kind of like da psychedelic, surreal beatnik lyrics. And later on, well, I draw every day and I do pictures every day, and I do them on cards because that's inexpensive. You can put them in your pocket, so like even if you're on a plane or you know, or you're waiting to get picked up in a bus or something, while you're on tour, you can still be making observations, and it's, it'd be like, it started off, it was like, in the early days, it was like ideas for Devo, uh, live shows, what our stage would look like if we ever got to be on a stage and play, if we ever got to go out and play, and clothing, what would we wear, and lyrics, and album titles and song titles and things like that. I'd collect all this stuff, but um, I thought they were writing like this beatnik poetry kind of in a way. And then when I said something to Jerry about it, like about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, he goes, "Oh no, punks were mostly stupid." He was like, "Get this whole other thing," and I go, "Well, I don't know. There's a lot of punk music with amazing lyrics in it, and you're right. There's a lot of them that are anti-intellectual, and I totally get that too. I understand why they would have this, why there would be people just enraged, because it's like the time I grew up. It was like, we were, when I was first at school, we felt like although we were kids and we were nobody, in some ways we were nothing. We were nobody. Nobody knew who we were. I We felt like, we what we said did matter, and what we said made a difference. And so we protested the war in Vietnam, and things that we thought were wrong, because we thought, yeah, that's going to be helpful. That's good for the government. Yeah, that's good for everything. And then they shot people, and when the government just got really tired of kids, like, creating this other voice, and this, this having a negative attitude towards what Nixon was trying to do, it's like, they shot people and killed them, and it changed music. It changed music, and it changed art. Like, they closed down our school in May 1970. After, on May 5th, the day after the shooting, they just sent everybody home. They said, "Do not come back. Stay out of here. Stay off campus." And so before that, I felt so excited about the art department and being at school. They were like, I got to see Morton Sabatnik, the electronic instrument pioneer. I learned about movies like Satyricon, and I had never thought about soundtracks before, because they were just like this stuff in these movies, and sometimes you'd think of it if it was like a musical or something. But for the most part, I just ignored music and film. And then when I saw Satyricon, I went, "Oh my God, that's that's such an amazing art form," and that's such, yeah. I really became interested then. Like, the Italian composers like, Nina Rota, and Morricone, and people like that. More so to me than like John Williams, later on. John Williams to me was like, I knew all his references. I knew how much he borrowed from the classics, and to me it was kind of like, he did a great job of it, and he did some films with Spielberg that were big and stuff like that. But I wasn't impressed with it. To me, it was like more of a craft. It wasn't an art. I didn't think of his composing. If you ever hear this, sorry I said that, but that's how I feel. To John,
Yeah. Well,
if
but
he
I think,
listens to the podcast.
well, you're right. He's
But
not doing weird vocalizations like Morricone is on his soundtracks, or he's not
oh yeah.
pushing things in that same sort of way.
Oh, actually, the guy who was the whistler for Morricone, a friend of mine, who was, an Italian composer and, songwriter. I went over to his house for dinner one time, and there's this old guy there. It's like, I figure it's an uncle from Italy or something. And after we have dinner, the guy takes out an acoustic guitar and starts playing acoustic guitar, and he does a medley of all the songs he'd done with Morricone, where he was the whistler.
That's
And
awesome.
I'm like, holy shit. And I ended up getting to use him on something. I think, what did he, I think, was it a Lego film, or was it a Wes Anderson thing? It was something. I used him in something. where I sent him some stuff and he whistled on it for me, which was kind of cool.
That's awesome. But to your point about the beats, you're right. Like, because Ginsberg formed a punk band when he moved out to Colorado with the Glue-Ons, and Burroughs was always hanging out around CB's,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's like when Jerry said that to me, I thought, well, I don't know if I agree with that, and because I was thinking, oh yeah, Devo's kind of North Coast beatniks, because and there was a North Coast beatnik. Matter of fact, there was a guy who printed this tirade I did that was like it was like if my 21-year-old head was a piñata and I took and bashed it open and all the shit that people had stuffed inside my head for the first part of my life just came flying out in every direction. It was and this guy printed the book, but he had a reputation because he was the first publisher to be arrested for printing the word fuck in a poetry in a hip in a like a hip beatnik poetry book, and so I knew that we had this tangential relationship to beatniks at least, even if we were a generation later. And then I just happened to be talking to do you know who V Vale is?
Absolutely. Research.
Yeah, Search and Destroy.
Yeah.
Well, he was the child of beatniks, and they had a lot to do with City Lights, putting that together, that incredible bookstore that's still there. And he was working there when I first met him, when Devo was playing in like 77, 78 at Mabuhay Gardens, the punk club in San Francisco. And so we were talking like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 years ago, 5 years ago. And I told him I was kind of writing this, I was putting together this book, and it was kind of had a lot to do with like a beat connection between punk and beat. And he goes, "Oh yeah, well, William Burroughs and Lawrence Ferlinghetti, or was it no, Allen Ginsberg? They each gave me $100 that I used to start Search and Destroy magazine." I thought, "Oh, okay, well, that's a great connection."
That's
So,
awesome.
so I went forward and I put this book together, and it was like I found a publisher of all things. This guy just kind of, it was kind of like the fate was working in my favor, because this guy walked into my studio about a year and a half ago, and he was all excited. He had just printed his first book. He had been connected to a record company in Australia and Blank Records, and he was connected to really strongly to punk bands and things. He was friends with John Silva, who they were both record collectors before John became the manager of Nirvana, for instance. And this guy, he's cool. He came over to my studio every time he came to visit from Australia, and we didn't really have. I don't think we had any business together ever until he put out this book for a photographer, Melanie Neeson, who she shot photos between late 70s and early 80s of the LA punk scene. And so he put that book together, and it was his first book, and he was so excited. He told me how thorough he was about he has OCD, so he was loving the idea of getting into the paper and like going through different kinds of paper to print it on and making it the most beautiful, incredible book that he could. And he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "It's so funny you walked in, because right now I'm sitting here with my art director assistant, and we're working on a book." And he goes, "Oh, I want to print it." And I go, "No, no, 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 no. You won't want to print this book, because you won't make any money on this book." And he goes, "No, I want to do an art project with you." I said, "Well, because it's pure art." And I told him about my beatnik thing, and he said, "Well, I'm financing that." So I was working on a bigger book, uh, like 1,600 pages, which means it would be like this thick. It'd be kind of like a little, like a log or something, or a auto. And it was kind of oversized pages. And I was going to just do it on Blurb. I love those companies where you go online and you take you take all the kids' photos and all the pets' photos and you put them in a homemade one-off book, and amateurs do it. They do these books and then they give one to grandma. It's like, I think in 20 or 30 years, all those kind of books are going to be really collectible because they're going to have like information that wasn't necessarily what was the reason why the books were created. There's going to be all this, other information that you're going to look at these books and go, oh, that's an incredible slice of 2020 or 2019 or whatever. And and I've been making them myself for like 15 years. I make books for myself, and I just do like I'll do like one and then or two, and then I'll print them up on blurb, and then I got them, and that's kind of my fun thing to do. But this one, and so that's what I thought this was going to be, another blurb book. And he goes, no, let's print it for real, blah 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 blah. And I was like, okay. I go, so while I'm putting that together, I'm thinking I'm going to give him an out. Let's it was based on all these, these images I'd done and all these drawings, which I've assembled into like uh how many books? Like all close to seven. I think it's almost 700 books now. That each have 100 images in them that are hand drawn, or they're writings, or they're collages. But I started back in like 1971 or so. I started keeping them, and because I was sending them out because I was doing mail art back in those days, and I loved the idea of putting a piece of art in the mail and then sending it to somebody, and then somebody would retaliate and send something back to you, or they'd take that card and they'd add to it and send it back to you or whatever. I loved it because I there were ways to get addresses for people like uh, like Rauschenberg and uh, Andy Warhol and Irene Dogmatic, or the Ant Farm, or Image Bank. And you could get these artists, you could send them things, and sometimes like an 18-year-old kid in Akron, Ohio, who was a nobody, I'd open up my mailbox and there'd be a piece of art from Robert, Indiana, that he'd just done something on a postcard and sent it to me. It took him 10 seconds, and like, I don't know, I think a postcard was like 4 cents to put in the mail in those days. So you could take any piece of cardboard, cut it that size, put a 4-cent stamp on it. It was inexpensive, anybody could afford that. And but I'd open this up in Akron, Ohio, and I'd feel like I was a somebody just because somebody that I really respected, or I thought had done amazing art, had sent me something. And but I stopped mailing them out in the early 70s when Devo started forming, because I realized I had lyrics and other things on these cards that I needed to keep rather. So I started putting them in these books where you got 100 in each book. Now there's, like I said, close to 700. But I was going through the books and I found about 8 or 9 books that, instead of every image being different and just relating to something that had happened on that particular day, or I woke up in the middle of the night, from a dream and I wrote something down, or I was sitting in traffic and I put some artwork on a piece of paper. I had these cards that I'd printed myself that were from a photo I'd taken of something I bought at a Botanica, which was an eye.
Oh, is
Ooh,
that, I've only seen the PDF. Is that what it looks like in real life? Oh my God, look at the cover.
and it's 3D. This
Oh,
guy,
that's
this
wild.
guy that made this book with me, he let me put this eye on in 3D.
That's awesome.
And this it's atypical to what the big book's going to be like, because the big book, it's a wider range of imagery. This book is kind of interesting for a whole nother reason.
Yeah.
They're all done on iCards over, and I don't know, it took like 5 years to make all the images in here. And Um, I called the book Apotropaic Beatnik Graffiti. And apotropaic is kind of like because the eye that I originally took a photo of was this plaster eye I bought in a Botanica, and it was to protect you from the evil eye. It was to protect you from evil energy. Like if somebody, you know, uh, wished bad on you, or wanted to harm you, you hung that thing up at the front door, and it would protect you, so that, and so I like that. It's and the other two words are beatnik, which refers to the writing that I did on each page, which was a collection of things that were just in my mind at some particular at that moment of the day, and they kind of, I kind of juxtaposed them together, and then graffiti because there's a lot of imagery mixed in with it too. And he said, "Yeah, let's make the book." So we made 2,000 of them. Uh, and they came out about a month and a half ago. They're halfway gone now. So that's kind of the latest thing I've done, has been this book, and I've just been really happy with it.
It looks amazing. Well, because last time we spoke, and you brought it up there, you said that to you, uh, Devo is kind of the horrors of the Kent State Massacre and the addition synth noises on Edition of You by Roxy Music last time we spoke. You were like, those are like
Oh yeah,
two touchstones for you for where this all
yeah,
came from. But to me, what you're doing, the wheat pasting, using photocopiers, silk screen, like all this stuff, you guys are like the original man for punk rock and hardcore kids that come after you. Like the wheat pasting, like Shepard Fairey, like obviously the being the most famous person to come out of punk rock with the wheat pasting stuff, I guess. But
yeah,
like
yeah.
every kid,
Obey.
yeah,
Mhm.
every kid who does flyers wheat pastes them. Like I've wheat pasted. Like it's and I think what you're doing is building a place for kids to have pride in being the outsider. Like it was an escape
Yeah,
hatch.
yeah. It's like it gives them a chance to feel like I did when I got something from Robert, Indiana in the mail, or how I did when the next day I'd walk by and there'd be a custodian scraping uh, a decal off of a fire hydrant, or that was hanging on the wall. And
Uh, Craig Bell was just on the podcast from Rock from the Tombs and later went on to play in the Saucers and stuff, but from Cleveland. And we were talking about Rock from the Tombs, and what a great collection of songs. But he was like, we just weren't in the right place to make it happen as a band. But then you juxtapose that with Akron, which is maybe even more removed from
yeah,
the cultural hot spot. But at the same time, you guys did it. You guys built it. And that's the thing that I think no one's ever going to be able to do it like you guys did it because there's a brilliance there. But at the same time, it was a proof of concept that you can be the weird kids in your school and you can join together and you can outsmart all the jocks and all the popular kids and just make your own cool world.
I knew I was going to be in a band when I was 13. I was absolutely certain that's what I was going to do when I grew up. So I was already, you know, tunnel visioned on that. It wasn't, it's like I remember when I got out to LA, I went, oh God, if I grew up here, I never would have made, there would be so many things that would have stopped me. I thought Ohio was to Devo's benefit because it gave us time to marinate, and it gave us time to think about what we were doing, so that by the time we did go to New York, uh, it was it didn't look like it was just like an afternoon project. It looked much deeper than that, and I think that's what impressed me. And I think that was the advantage of being in Ohio, was that it kept us from like going on stage too soon.
Mm. Well, it's also interesting because I think if you put Devo on paper and explained the band and brought it to like any of the big record executives at that time, they would have been like, "There's no way we're signing this thing."
Oh yeah, they did turn us down. Yeah,
Did you guys try it before you self-released?
yeah. Jerry and I and uh, drove out to LA, was it 75, I think, 70, 75, before we made our first film even. And we had an address for Joe Walsh because he was from Kent, Ohio, and his one of his roadies told us how to get in touch with him. And so we did, and he said, "Yeah, I'll listen to some music." As we said, we'd come out and play it for him. And then the other person was Frank Zappa. And so we were sleeping on. So there's this guy, there was a roadie who let us sleep on the floor in his little bachelor crash pad that he stayed at when Joe Walsh wasn't on tour. And we drove over, we drove all the way out from Ohio out to LA, and I think it was on that trip that Boogie Boy got invented, because we used to take masks and entertain ourselves. Uh, and so I think I was Boogie Boy all the way out to LA. But we got to his house. We got to Joe Walsh's house, and he had this cool house in Topanga Canyon, and uh, he was really nice. And we went into his living room, and we put the tape on his big beautiful stereo, and he had Jerry and me sitting in this like outdoor rocking chair, that the kind that hangs on a couple, chains, like it'd be wide enough like two, maybe three people could fit on it. So he had us sit on it because it was directly facing the speakers, and we're sitting there, and the three of us are in the room together. And I think the first song was a plan. What was it called? A Plan for You, and it was like, dear, 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 bah, ha, 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 bah, ha, ha, ha. Lane to the left, dodge to the right, or you'll be a flat tire on the freeway of life. Dear, 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 dear. And I don't know if he made it through the whole song, but somewhere in the first couple songs, he excused himself and went out into and left the living room. And so we sat there and we listened to this 40-minute long demo tape we'd made, just the two of us, and he wasn't around. And like about half hour into it, I'm sitting on one side of this rocking chair with Jerry, and I lean over, and Joe's leaned over top of the dining room table, and he's passing a joint back and forth with another really long hair guy. And they're like, they're stifling their laughter. They can't. They're like trying not to make any noise as they listen to the song. They thought it, and I was like, what? I thought they were going to think this was the most brilliant stuff they'd ever heard. I mean, on the way out, we were like figuring out what the first thing we were going to do when we got a record deal, and we were both into janitorial supply catalogs, and things like that. And I remember thinking, I want one of those stainless steel prison toilets, that they had like these stainless steel toilets where the seat and everything was stainless steel, so you couldn't break it, and have shards that you could turn into a weapon or anything. And they had sinks that were like for like in a factory and stuff like that. And we thought, yeah, I want to make my house just look like a factory. I want to use your factory appliances. And we had all these plans of what we were going to do. And he came back into the room after the tape was over, and he comes over and he goes, guys, he goes, I don't know if that went over my head, under my head, around me. Says, I didn't quite get it, but I gotta say it was interesting. And I really want to encourage you guys to keep up the good work. And I really want to hear whatever the next thing is that you put out. And we're like, but what? I thought you were going to we thought he was going to load us in a car and we were going to drive to whatever a record company was, because we'd only heard of them. We'd never seen one in person. They were like this fictitious fantasy thing, where an artist gets to make a record, which is incredible. So, and we were just like, we couldn't believe it. And so then instead, he starts telling us stuff like he took us out on his deck, and he goes, "You hear that sound?" He goes, "That's a whippoorwill." And we're like, "So the fuck what?" We're like, what just happened? It sounds like you don't, and we didn't say it to him. We were in shock, that he wasn't like we thought he was going to hear it and think it was the best music he'd ever heard in his life. It was like so. And the last thing he said, I just remember him going, I'm joining a new band. We go, what? And he goes, yeah, it's not going to be the James Gang anymore. I'm joining a band called the Eagles. And I just remember thinking, that's the stupidest name for a band I could imagine. The Eagles. And we drove away from his place. Totally, we were in shock. We could not believe what he said. And so then the next day, Jerry goes, okay, I'm going over to Frank's myself. Maybe it's better if just one. Can he? Because Jerry looked a little more uh, normal, I guess you'd say.
Okay, yeah.
And so he went over to Frank's himself, and he had a briefcase, and he said he introduced himself as the manager of Devo. And Frank listened to the tape, and he goes, After he goes, where'd you guys record this? And Jerry goes, well, we recorded it in a basement in Akron, Ohio. And he goes, that's where that band belongs. He goes, yeah, just keep them there. And and so it was like we struck out. I could not believe it. I thought it was going to be totally different. So that was our early days of.
So then the thought was just let's go back and make a movie and do it that way because it's such a weird.
Well, then what happened is we went back, and I thought, fuck it, I'm doing a band no matter what. That's what I always wanted to do. That's what I'm doing. And Jerry wasn't so sure. He was like, I'm going to go out to California again. He had a friend who was, the guy was my teacher for one class at Kent State, John Zabrucki, and he was a graphic design guy. And he had gone out to California to start a prop company, and he was called Modern Props. It became one of the biggest prop companies in LA. And I think Jerry was thinking about maybe, like maybe I should partner up with John. And so before he left, I said, I'll tell you, Jerry, I'm doing a band no matter what. I don't care what happens. You go out there, whatever you want. I'm doing a band. I'm going back out there and we're going to get a record deal. So we made this film. Chuck Statler, who was a friend of ours, had gone to Minneapolis to make commercials, and he was a film cameraman, a film director, and he was a commercial director, but he also made all these art films before that. And Jerry and him had made this little short, silly film where they were picking up dog turds in the snow or something with a stick and chasing one another or something silly. It wasn't much. It was just like a little kind of like cute art project. And he came back and Jerry said, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with this band. He goes, I don't know. It's too weird. It's too weird. The band was weird. And it was at the time, the band was my two brothers and Jerry and me. It was the four of us. And it was the band that you hear and see on our first film with Jocko Homo and Secret Agent Man. And if you listen to the drums in that, my brother Jim, he was an inventor who he created one of the first electronic drum kits ever. And he plays it on that record and you hear it and it does not sound like a drum kit, it's very electronic sounding and I loved it. It was like, but it was like we were just, we played some shows and in Ohio and we'd get like halfway, we'd finish our first set, in a night where we were going to play two or three sets, of all original music in these clubs. And after the first set, we'd get paid to leave. They'd go, nope, you did great. Here's your money. Here's your $50, and you can go now. We don't need you to play the next two sets. So we were thinking, well, how are we going to do something different? And we thought subversion, because being like we really sounded like Captain Beefheart meets Sun Ra meets Italian sci-fi film.
Yeah, there's nothing that sounds like it prior to, which is like I think you guys being so assured that like, oh, these guys in these really conventional band, like even Zappa, are going to understand this because you're like you're saying, it sounds like all those things, but then made by people from a different world. Like it's completely unique at the time.
So in the meantime, Jerry and one of the other guys went to New York and they saw the Ramones. And he came back and he said, "Listen to this." And so we listened to this Ramones record and we're like, "Wow, that's really cool." And we were playing our songs like we go, "I've got an urge, got a surge, and it's out of control." Boom, boom, boom. And then after we listened to Ramones, we go, "We could do that." We start going, "I got an urge, got a surge, and it's out of control." And we loved it once we started playing everything faster and got off of the blues thing and got more into a punk thing. It like was really exciting for us and it changed our adrenaline. And that's how Devo kind of got connected with punk. And it's like there were, like a lot of bands that they were, more into anarchy and then tearing things apart. And we were more into like analyzing things and we had kind of a different attitude, but somehow we fit together really well. We, you know, we got along with people like the Sex Pistols. I mean, after their last show at Mabu at in San Francisco, Devo was playing the next day at Mabuhay Gardens, but they all showed up that night. We were staying at Search and Destroy because they didn't pay us enough to play at Mabuhay Gardens to afford a hotel room, so we just crashed on the floor. We laid on stacks of Search and Destroy magazines, and that night after the Sex Pistols played their last show, they all came over to that house where we were staying and partied with us. It was kind of interesting, it's like yeah, I mean it led to other stuff. I mean Richard Branson tried to get tried to tool something where Johnny Rotten became part of Diva. You probably heard that
I've heard
story.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
How
But
far did that go in your mind? Was it just him talking out of his ass, or was it like something you were like, "Oh, this could be interesting"?
no, he totally I wish I would have well here's we'd had so many people at that point already from record companies and from managers because we had no manager, no agents, no anything. We had all these people saying, "I'm managing Devo," or "I'm signing Devo to Red Star Records," and things like that. And we'd be like, "You never even talked to us. Who are you?" And we were so, and we had people that were like Blondie wanted to do before we recorded our album. They said, "Hey, we want to do Come Back Johnny before you guys do." And I'm like, "Well, no, I want to record it first. I don't know if I want you to record my music for." And Iggy Pop said the same thing. He wanted to record the whole first Devo album before we recorded it. And I was kind of like, so we were really protective about that kind of stuff. So that's, so of course Richard Branson calls us up, after this is a few months after the Pistols have broken up, and we're in Ohio, freezing. Somebody's letting us sleep in their living room again. I mean, a matter of fact, the day that he called, I remember I was sleeping on the living room couch, and then Bob Casale was sleeping in what back when they built this building back in like 1910 or something. This apartment would have been the green room or something out in front, with glass all around it, and he was sleeping on a couch there, and the window had blown open, and he was covered with snow. And so we got a phone call from Richard Branson, and he says, "Hey, do you guys want to come to Jamaica?" And we're like, "Jamaica? That sounds warm." He goes, "Oh, it's warm here." He goes, "Yeah, I got a place, and why don't you come on down, just hang out for a little while?" And Bob Casale and I were like, "We got nothing else going on. That sounds good to us." So we flew down to Jamaica, and it was like we get in there. It's our first day. We're, we're in Kingston. He's sitting with a bunch of the South Africans that he had started Virgin Records with, and we're all the same age. We're all in our mid 20s, and we had talked to him about we'd already been talking about, him putting our record out in Europe, you know, and I just remember we're sitting, he has Bob, somehow they arranged it so they're all sitting on the couch and Bob and I are sitting on the floor and there's like this big pile of marijuana and, Wortham, Ohio, where marijuana was like 50% oregano, no matter what the situation was. And, people in Ohio, they'd roll these little
Pinners.
toothpick-sized joints and you'd wait all till the weekend and then everybody'd drink some wine and then they'd go, okay, let's light this tiny joint up and all six of us will. So we'd light it up and we'd all take a puff and then they go, can you feel it? And be like, I think so. Give me another glass of wine. It was kind of like that kind of a thing, and so when they had all this pot, we're like, wow, that's hardcore. That's a real stack of marijuana. And they rolled these giant joints and they kept passing them to Bob and me. And Bob's like smoking. And I can't really do it because I never was a smoker anyhow. Because I sang, I was always worried about my lungs and my throat. So I never smoked much. But we're smoking and, he starts Richard Branson starts talking about Sex Pistols, and we're like, oh yeah, it's a shame they broke up. We love them. They were like our favorite band. They're so cool, blah, blah, blah. He goes, well, I'll tell you why you're here in Kingston. I go, why? He goes, I got somebody some melody maker, somebody some sounds, and somebody some New Music Express, all in next rooms. And we want to go down to the beach. Johnny Rotten is here. And we want to go down and announce that Johnny Rotten is joining Devo. And I just remember looking at him and going, he's like looking at me with a big smile, and I'm like his teeth. I looked. I said, his teeth are protruding. I'm thinking to myself, his teeth are protruding like a brain-eating ape. And Bob Gasali's like, what? What are you talking about? And I'm like, we love them and we like them, but I don't mean we want to be in the same band. And then was that thing, like where, how like when you're smoking pot sometimes something happens and it's not funny at all, but you start laughing because it's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
I started laughing. I'm going, Richard, I'm not laughing at you. I'm, but I couldn't stop laughing. I go, I'm not laughing at you. It's just that, it's just such a crazy idea. I don't think we could do it, but and
And well, then John did kind of go out and form his Devo style band with Pill.
well, you know what? It's like we said, hey, you know what? You should do what John should do is he's been into anarchy with this last band. What you guys should do is flip it over. He should do Johnny Rotten Incorporated. And he kind of
He
he
did.
did Public Image Limited, he
Yeah.
did the ABC thing. So kind of he did a little bit of that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely cribbed a
I
note off you.
yeah, we were both backstage at some festival that we both Johnny Lydon and Devo were playing and we're hanging out backstage and him and I talked about it and he goes, yeah, he goes, Richard didn't tell me what I was down there for either. He just did that to both of us. He was like a prankster.
It's like people could tell there was something special with Devo, like from the sounds of this, but they just didn't know what to do with you guys, and it took you guys kind of being showing everyone what you're gonna do.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we were very we were the so unfun to be a producer. If you became the producer of our band, I'm sure it was with every producer it was probably equally unenjoyable because we keep listening to things and we go, that doesn't sound like it did yesterday. What happened? What's different? What is it, the snare? Is it the synth? And like we'd be like we were like overanalyzed everything.
Well, one person who worked on your record that's come up on this show is Jack Black's brother, Howard Siegel.
Oh, yeah.
Rest in peace. But when Jack was on the show, he talked about how he got a lot of cachet in school from telling people that his brother had done the whip sound.
Well, Bob Margoloff is the one exception to that, to somebody being, like a Bob and Howie were actually the most they helped Devo elevate our sound. They he spent enough. I also have a lot. He came from a heavy electronics background. Both those guys. They were, they were, Bob built Tonto,
Mm.
you know, and original. neo-timbral orchestra, which was this incredible, like eyeball orb, giant eyeball orb shaped synth that you could stand inside.
Doesn't it live in Canada now, Tonto? In Manitoba? I think I know a couple friends have recorded with,
Oh, it's up there now. Yeah, I think I'm going to say Calgary. It's in
oh,
Calgary.
you're right, Calgary. Yes.
Somebody, because there's a synth museum there, and it's funny you're saying that because I just talked to Bob like about an hour ago. He called me up. He's like, because there's one 2-inch tape from that album that disappeared. Side two, I think it is. Whatever side has freedom of choice, Warner Brothers lost it, and that's the only album that they had the 2-inch master tapes of. I had all the rest. I kept them all, but our our manager at the time, we went to Japan the very next day after we finished that album, and instead of sending them over to my place where all the other tapes were, he sent those tapes all to Warner Brothers, and they held on to them. And then they, like I said, they when we were looking for them recently, we couldn't find Freedom of, the side two of the album. So uh,
Bob.
Bob said, yeah, earlier today, he said, I'm going over to it's Howie's birthday weekend, and I'm going to go over. There's a little party at the family's house, and I'm going to go over there. I'm going to go look around in his. He has a like some sort of a room where he has tapes and things, and I'm going to go see if any of the Devo multi-tracks are there because this really bugs me that that's missing. And he's like, just today saying, Mark, let's do something again. We did something really great all those years ago. Let's do it again.
Well, it's amazing because, like, obviously you guys had made amazing records up until that point, but like you're saying, that's the record where it just goes to a different gear a little bit. And like you've been going to different gears on every record, but it's like it's rare that a band can find that a couple albums in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now it's like, and it all changed once CDs and MTV came in because CDs made it so that instead of having like somewhere around 40 minutes on an album, you now had 80 minutes. So people were filling it with like nonsense just to use up the CD. And then MTV forced people to have to make a video so that you could get played on MTV to to promote your album. That was the only place to promote an album for like 2 decades or something. And people had to gamble on what song are we going to spend all the money we just got as an advance from our record company. What song are we going to spend all our money on to make a video? And we don't do that. We're musicians, you know, Devo, we made our own videos. But these other bands, the record companies would go to ad agencies and find directors to hire to come over and make a video where there'd be like a stupid rubber ball bouncing through the screen for no reason. And then, the guitar player's girlfriend would be dressed as a damsel in distress sitting on the back of a white horse. And, the videos were ridiculous. And I think both MTV and CDs had a lot to do with um, making it so you had to have a hit on the first record or you'd just get dropped. And we still got connected in that time period where it didn't cost much to print vinyl. So we got to do a third album because if we wouldn't have, we never would have, gone on or become renowned really.
But it seems like it caught on, like obviously it gets exponentially bigger at a certain point, but it seems like it catches on right away in punk. Like there's people
Oh,
bootlegging you guys a year after the 7 inches are coming out.
yeah. But if you look at what happens to so many of the really great punk bands, when you're in the DIY world or if you're just doing small things like that, then it's like there's not enough to sustain you so that you can, you got to keep your day job and then take off a couple months to tour to back the record. It's like, so you keep going back to your day job. And so many bands that were great never got to do their third album, you know? They got to do album one or album two, and then that was it, you know?
But it's almost like you have to, like you're saying, you didn't accept the fact that you weren't going to be in a band. And it's almost like you have to believe in it because that's the only way you're going to be able to fly.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah,
beyond
you have
that,
to be, and you know, like I said, when I came out here, I thought, oh man, there's so many things that would make you feel, because there's so many people that you go, look at that, he's 16 and he's got a gigantic record deal, you know, and you're like, there's so many ways for you, because there's no way to measure success really, you know, in that world. You know, there's no real great way. You always feel like there's somebody younger, there's somebody with more talent, there's somebody that's had better luck with their record, you know, there's somebody that's touring more, you know. There's all these things that I could see it'd be easy to be in a city like LA or New York or London and just go, forget it. You know, it's too difficult, you know. We were luckily in Ohio and we were delusional enough to not know better.
and I think because you made, and this is me as an outsider, obviously, but I think it's because you made not just the music, not just the graphics, the art, but the whole concept of being in a band, the art form. It also
Mhm.
demystified it for everybody watching it. And I'm going to reuse the same quote I brought up last time we talked, which is that Cocteau quote about film not being an art form until pens and paper, or till cameras are the price of pens and paper, because anyone can do it at that point. And I feel like with bands, that kind of happens post you guys, but you guys are kind of showing people the way that, like, with photocopiers, with screen printing, you can be in Akron, Ohio, and make one of the most important bands to ever come out of music. And it's just because you can build it.
You know, we thought we were doing an art movement, to be honest with you. We thought we were doing something like we were really interested in like all the art movements in like now 100 years ago in Europe. If I could have been born in another time, I would have wanted to have been at like 21 in 1920 or 1925, somewhere in there, where Bauhaus and Futurism, the Futurists, and Dada and the Surrealists and the Russian suprematists, who were kind of like Devo in a way, because they made fun of man being so obsessed with themselves, you know, and humans thinking they were the center of the universe. And I don't know if you ever paid any attention to them, but they actually, and of all of those groups, they probably had the best politics. Probably the Futurists had the worst.
Yes.
They were the most aligned with fascism, and but I mean, just the art of that time just really was exciting, and we wanted to be Art Devo. You know, we wanted to be our version of that movement, and you know,
In, instead, you created a religion, like, because I think this is more than an art form, because it doesn't have any unifying aesthetics to it. It's more something that it was created that people can look to and believe in, that's bigger than themselves and draw strength from to kind of make their own art movements for themselves.
huh? Well, I like that. You can if you get a if you get like a talk show, like a blog or something, you know, where you interview people, you can have me on it. Oh, wait a minute, we're doing
We're
that.
doing it. Last time we spoke, you said you and me should have a talk show together.
Oh, see, that would be a good idea.
I think it would be a lot of fun. I could
You're
keep,
more articulate than me. I'm much more. I spiral in circles and
yeah, but you're smarter. I'm just more full of hot air. So I think together it's like you got the brains, I got the windbag. Let's make lots of money style. Um, when you guys, was Satisfaction the first single, or Are We Not Men the first single that you guys self-released?
uh Jocko Homo Mongoloid was the first single, and we pressed that in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I remember walking out of Queen City Records down in Cincinnati, Ohio. We drove down there to pick up our 1,000 discs. That was
Oh,
the
Sorry.
I would like
Hey,
to
buddy.
at
Oh,
least
come
smile.
on.
Hi, how are you?
They're a big fan of you because of Yo Gabba Gabba, and we
Oh,
listen to your music. So
I
we
like
met over in
yoga.
school.
There's new Yo Gabba Gabbas, but they're too old for them now.
Yeah, well, I feel like that's the problem with Yo Gabba Gabba. My kids aged out of it before I did.
Mm. Well, it's like, well, because they were wearing diapers when they first started watching it. And this happens to all kids. It's like whether it's Barney or whatever, whatever you're watching when you're wearing diapers and then you leave diapers, you're like, oh, I'm not into that anymore,
Yeah,
because that's when you were a baby. Now you're a big kid,
but
you
I'll tell
know.
you, Barney never had yourself teaching kids how to draw, and never had Paul Williams performing on it. So I think that puts you guys one step with Yo
Yeah,
Gabba
Yo
Gabba ahead.
Gabba Gabba is pretty great.
Uh, the uh, the impetus to kind of put out your own records, like obviously you had the disastrous experience with trying to get on a bigger label, but was there someone that was inspiring you guys to do that, or is it just like let's just there's a means, there's a way?
Yeah, it was just like there was we were like, I don't know if there's a place where you can make records in Ohio, but there's definitely not a record company. There's no record companies. But then we found there was there was a pressing plant in Cincinnati, and we thought, what's it cost? And it was like, you know, we had to get like $800 together or something, $700, whatever it cost. It was like 70 cents a record or maybe less. But if you were printing 1,000. And then we went to Bobby Watson and Sue Macero's apartment, and we folded the covers because they were like three-way folding we folded the covers and put little stickers on them to hold them shut. And it's like, man, I felt like I was on, you know, that was like that was the greatest feeling to have a record where you're like, well, it doesn't matter. We're going to sell them ourselves. And so we did sell them ourselves. That's the only way we could do it. We'd drive to record stores, and I remember going up to Cleveland with Bob Lewis, and we'd walk into a record store and go, "Hey, need another Devo record? And need some more Devo records? Are you out yet?" And they'd go, "Oh, let me see." And they go down to this box that said other stuff, and they pull it out and they go, "Nope, we still got the one you brought in last week, still here." I go, "Okay, see you next week." And then that's how we were, that's how we put out our records. But to us, that was like something, that was like at least something moving forward.
That also was, I tell you, the second greatest feeling on earth, after putting it out being the first, was finding a copy of the first press in Amsterdam 2 years ago when I was on tour there. I couldn't believe that I'd finally, because I had the second press, which has a different colored screen on the inside, but finally the first
Oh,
press.
you're talking about Devo.
I'm talking about Mongoloid Jocko Homo,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. The first press was 1,000, and it's the black. It has
the
black
black.
ink on the inside. And then the second one, Stiff did, and they added something. They added their logo somewhere on it, I
On
think.
the front, it says
Yeah.
stiff on it right there.
Yeah.
But it's
And
such
they
a
stiffed us.
pardon me, sir.
And they stiffed us. They never paid us a cent.
Really? Oh, that's terrible to hear because yourselves and the Go-Go's, they're putting out the records long before American, um, well, certainly mainstream labels took in
Yeah.
notice. And one thing also is watching that movie. Where was the distribution channels that you had in mind for it? Was it going to be like film festivals, underground theaters?
We
Because
didn't even think about it. We were just making, well, actually, here's why we decided, yeah, let's make it, is because Chuck Statler came over Christmas time that year and he goes, check this out. And it was Popular Consumers, or no, Popular Electronics magazine. And it had a young couple, like a young, happy, white couple, like in their 20s, that they're holding up a disc, and it's the size of an LP, like a black vinyl LP, but it's silver and it's mirrored, and it says laser discs. Everyone will have one by Christmas next year, or something like that. And we're like, oh, there you an album where you can put visuals on the record. We thought, holy shit, that's incredible. So you get an album worth of music and an album worth of art. We decided that's what we're making product for, laser discs. So that's how we made the first one. And then, but we didn't know what to do with it after we made it. And Chuck on his own said, well, I'm going to put it in the Ann Arbor Film Festival. And he won first prize for a film short. And so that's what kind of brought us to the attention of other people because it got on a touring schedule with like 20 other short films that had all won at different film festivals, and it went around. And when it got out to California, and it attracted the attention of an A&R guy at A&M Records.
Because it eventually winds up on like the tape trading circuit too, like VHS copies. Because I saw a very sketchy bootleg. My dad had it one time, and it scared the shit out of me.
We passed up, we everything we had, we just gave it away to everybody trying to get a record deal. That's why there were so many bootlegs because we had like 40 songs at least before we had a record deal. So, you could, I mean, if you were making singles or if you're making albums only hold, like 30 minutes of music or 40 minutes of music. So we had full albums worth of stuff. And then people were recording us at our live shows and putting those out. Yeah, there was something like 11, 13 bootleg discs before we ever put out our first album with Warner's Virgin.
Well, yeah, because like that Mabuhay Garden Show's bootleg, the early
Yeah,
demos are all bootleg. Like it really, like you're saying,
everything.
it was but I think it's interesting the bootlegs because there's a lot that are just the normal white sleeve with that orange piece of paper stuck in there, but there's
Yeah,
some with like a lot of production value in
yeah,
them
with
too.
some really good graphics. Yeah.
Yeah, like almost with like they're trying to pass it off like a different, like another band that's doing this kind of style of music. It seems like there's one
Uh,
in particular, like this one, the Workforce
oh yeah,
bootleg.
Workforce of the World. Yeah, yeah.
It took me
Those
forever to realize this. I'm like, this is Devo, right? It's got to be Devo on this thing.
okay. After that came out, a few months later, I'm living in somebody's, my brother's girlfriend's mother's house. I had a little tiny room that I used as a bedroom and a recording studio. And people are coming in one morning and they're saying, hey, there's a couple guys sitting in a car out in the driveway. They got here about 6 in the morning. And I'm like, what? And so it went, and honestly, people did sit out in front of the house in their cars because we had no protection and everybody could find out where we lived. It was no big, it was not hidden. And but these two guys are out there and they said they want to talk to you, Mark. They have something for you. And they had put out Workforce to the World, these two guys. And they came and they go, we want to present you with this trophy for Workforce for the World. And I'm like, oh, what's that going to be? And they hand me this thing and I pull off the cardboard sleeve on top of it. It's a human fetus, and on it it says Workforce to the World, uh, in appreciation presented to Boogie Boy, and they had the date on it and they had how many records they'd sold. And they handed me, I go, how'd you get that through customs? And they go, well, we had that cardboard thing over it. I just carried it through. They never bothered to look.
Oh my God.
I go, yeah, you could have got sent home.
I was gonna, well, before I knew what it was, I was gonna like ask you if you kept that, but I imagine you're like, you can put this in the labels office. This has
I
been
kept everything.
you
That's all
kept
I'm saying.
everything.
I have all I have love letters from Sue Catwoman. You know who she is?
Yes, rest in peace.
Yeah, when she was like a little kid, she was smitten with Bob Casale, and she wrote him love letters, and they'd be these like floral looking things written by a young girl where every instead of a period she'd put a daisy at the end of every line and she'd talk about I can't wait to see you again and I miss you but she'd be gluing pictures out of like New Music Express, like all the different magazines that had pictures of her. So there'd be like this really fierce looking photo of this girl with her head shaved and just and like pins in her nose and lips back when nobody did that. And she's like 19 or 18 at the time, and she'd just like glue pictures of herself all over these things that she would send to Bob, and I still have those.
That's amazing. You know what? Instead of doing a museum exhibit next time, you should just open a museum.
Mm.
Like with your art and with all this ephemera, like these old postcards. Like there's
I
just,
have a warehouse.
oh
I
my
got
gosh. I will
all this.
pay admission. You open that up to the public. I'm the first in line for it, Mark.
Well, next time you make it to Los Angeles, I'll give you a
Oh
tour.
my gosh. This has been a thrill and a half for me to have you back on this podcast. And I could
Oh,
punish you forever. And I will make it mercifully short because I know you probably have a lot to do. Uh, but anytime, Mark, you want to come back on this thing and talk about fetus awards or postcard art, you're always welcome.
okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. I like your room. Is that at your home
This is
or?
my house, yeah.
Yeah, because it looks like you're in a really awesome record store.
This is kind of
All the cassettes in the back and all the vinyl over on the side of behind your left shoulder, I guess.
what it goes all the way around the house too, but
Oh, look at
it
that.
all kind of started from going through my dad's record collection and taking the Devo LP that had the bonus 7-inch inside and finding the Stiff single there and then just kind of going from there.
Okay. Well, when you get sick of that collection, try to resist the urge to break it up and sell it. Try and have it all go to one place because to me, like these kind of collections are really important because they have you know, somebody's overthoughts, like your overview of assembling this. And to me, it's always fascinating to look at somebody's collection like that. If I was at your house, I'd probably spend the first hours just in that room, just going through and seeing what it was that you collected and I would find that extremely fascinating. I think those kind of, I think, that's why I love iPhones because I think kids are like they've like they're doing with iPhones what you did with all this vinyl and what I did with my cards. It's like they're collecting something that is an autobiographical story, and it's but it also relates to the world, and so I like that. So when I first thought selfies, when I used to just think, oh, they're just some egotistical, stupid thing, then I started thinking of them as something more than that.
Well, you're right. It is sort of there's an art to curation, and that's what
Yeah,
you see when you go to someone's house and get to look through their collection. That's like I guess you're right. The iPhone is the closest thing we have to being able to do that now because we don't really hold on to these artifacts in the same sort of way.
it's harder now. It's harder now. And artifacts are different now because, you know, people are listening to their music on their phone. They're not, you know, they don't go out and buy the vinyl and have the cardboard cover that they're looking at going, what did they mean by what does this line mean? Why did they say that? Why did they shoot the picture where why is John Lennon in that position in the picture? It's like all the stuff that was so important when you were a kid, they 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 have a trade-off, they have a trade-off. The trade-off is you there's a band that they like now, and then they find out who that band was influenced by, and then they can go, oh, Nirvana, or they can go, oh, Nirvana covered a Devo song, and then they can, Devo covered a Rolling Stones song, and then the kids they have all these like they can be sophisticated if they wanna, they can be really smart. I think it's really a nice time to be a kid,
Well, this has been a
in spite of
sorry. Go on. I didn't mean to cut it off there. I cut it off.
I'm sorry, I said in spite of the politics going on around us, which it's just people figuring out how to deal with fake news. They'll figure it out.
Well, I think they're going to be more savvy because they've grown up with it, so they're going to have the
Exactly.
defenses.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
um, well, thank you for giving me that escape hatch in high school to get away from society because I
Oh,
needed it.
okay. Well, you're welcome. And thank you for having me on your show and letting me get a little peek at I got a jealous peek at your interesting collection. And I see there's stuff even up on the top shelf. Well, I don't know. I'll have to.
Oh, I got to show you my key Devo figurine and I got lots. Any you come to Toronto and I'll give you a tour of my warehouse.
Okay. All right. Now you're talking. Can Devo spend the night on your living room floor the night we play Toronto?
Thank you, Mark, for coming on the show. And Mark, of course, you can stay at my house anytime you guys are in town. Oh, that was so much fun. Check out this book. It's beautiful. It's almost sold out. You're going to regret it. Buy now or cry later, as they say in the punk rock world. They probably say that in other worlds too, but I've definitely felt that emotion in the punk rock world. I've also bought now and cried later when I had to pay this credit card statement. So that sword swings both ways, but you never regret having the item. You just regret having to eventually pay for it, I guess. I will not regret seeing Devo in Las Vegas in, oh my gosh, like a week for Punk Rock Bowling. They're going to be headlining the Sunday show on May 26th. There will be a Punk Rock Bowling episode this week. Uh, I don't really give away which ones they're going to be on this, but they're all good. They're the ones that are waiting in the tank. If you're not listening to that Roger one that I put up last week, please listen to it. I feel like that's one of my favorite Turned Out a Punk episodes, and the Kathleen Hanna one. And we're on a roll. Like CJ and John Reese and Spike at my house. We're on a roll over here at Turned Out a Punk, and the roll will continue. I promise you. Check out Devo. Check out Mark's new book, and check out all these other episodes of the podcast. It's a lot of stuff for you to check out, but I have faith in you. You can do it. That's it for me and another episode of the show. Remember, as always, Black Lives Matter. The lives and issues faced by Indigenous peoples all over the world matter. We need to protect trans kids and help trans people protect themselves and their rights. Stop hate and violence towards people of different faiths, different identities, different nationalities, different sexualities. Because we're not talking about politics here. This is just basic human rights shit. People deserve to live free from hate and violence. That's why ceasefires aren't political. These aren't political things. This is just human rights. What people want to do with their reproductive systems. That's just basic human rights. So if there's organizations that are affecting positive change in your community and you want to get involved, there's lots of ways you can do it. You can donate time, you can donate money, you can, if you have it, not the only way to help. You can lend support, you can get involved. And maybe you'll feel better doing that. I know it definitely gets better when you get involved. Punk. So start a band, start a fanzine, start a record label, start a podcast. Do whatever. Do whatever you want to do because this thing's like Minecraft, a giant sandbox game, but you can make your own culture, IRL. So just do it. Not to steal anyone's slogan, but for real, like this is the real place. You just do it. And that's it for me. Oh no, I got more stuff to say. Sign your organ donor cards because by the time they come looking for those organs, you don't need them anymore. Those things perform miracles. And finally, try meditating. Like you don't have to subscribe to anything or even pay any money. There's like you can do free meditations all over the place, and it takes a while, but when it clicks, it really does click, and it's something even when I don't find time to meditate, I return to sort of the stuff I learned through it, breathing wise, and all sorts. Anyway, I don't go into detail. There's more people out there that know way more than I do about this shit, so listen to them instead of me. But don't sign up to anything. You don't have to sign up to anything. You can pay for an app and stuff. I mean like that, but I mean like you don't have to join any. You know, you could do what you want. Fuck it. Thanks for listening. It's punk rock bowling time. That's right, for the 24th year, one of the greatest festivals on earth, in my opinion, returns to downtown Las Vegas the weekend of May 25th, 26th, and 27th. I have had some of my greatest times playing this thing and just hanging out at this thing. You want to know how much this festival speaks to Turn Out a Punk's mindset? The headliners are Devo, Descendants, and Madness. Every day of this festival, the lineup is stacked with amazing bands of all types and stripes of punk and hardcore from all different eras, from ska to post-hardcore. We're talking like Bratmobile to Rock from the Crypt to Stiff Little Fingers to the Cosmic Psychos to Scowl to Chad. And then there's also all these late night after shows which are happening. And you wouldn't believe the lineup of these things, from the Zeros to Agnostic Front and everything in between. This festival is out of control for fans of punk. So I hope I will see you there, because this isn't like some sort of festival that you just go to and the bands are secluded in some sort of backstage area. Bands and fans and just punks alike are all just taking over downtown Las Vegas. So you turn around and all of a sudden you're gambling beside John Doe from X. I don't know if John Doe gambles, but if you turn around on the buffet line, you'll probably see me. And you better believe we're going to be talking about punk music. And because this festival loves this podcast as much as this podcast loves this festival, Punk Rock Bowling is bringing you a series of special episodes. So each and every week, I will have an episode going up featuring someone that's playing this festival. And hot damn, are there some good ones coming. Head over to punkrockbowling.com and hopefully I see you in downtown Las Vegas, May 25th, 26th, and